Welcome. You've joined us for a deep dive from the Nepalese Diaspora Network.
Your source for news, views, and insights for the global Nepalese diaspora.
And if you happen to read our Nepali Diaspora Digest newsletter, you'll probably recognize some of what we're covering today. We're expanding on those key developments in Nepal.
That's right. And our goal, really, for the next, say, 20 minutes or so is just to get you up to speed.
Exactly. What matters most right now in Nepal. We'll use our recent sources, keep it clear, concise.
Okay, let's get into it.
So, looking at the info we've gathered, it's the sheer range of activity, isn't it, across Nepal?
It really is. You've got these significant shifts in the economy, important things happening socially and culturally, and, of course, developments in governance.
And often interconnected, right?
Definitely. Lots of threads linking them all together.
Okay, so let's dive right into the economy then. That new trade policy 2025 seems like a big deal, especially when you see the trade deficit numbers. Nearly, 987.39 billion rupees?
In just the first 8 months of this fiscal year, yeah. It's staggering.
So you can see why they're pushing this policy. There's a real urgency.
You absolutely can. And the government clearly feels the pressure, especially with Nepal graduating from least developed country status soon. That's a big backdrop.
Right. So what's the policy actually trying to do?
Well, fundamentally, it's about making Nepalese products more competitive. Globally competitive by improving the infrastructure, the things that support trade, and also making the actual processes, the trade practices, smoother, more efficient.
Streamlining things.
Exactly. And there's a focus on boosting the value of what Nepal makes, improving quality, using new tech. It's quite comprehensive.
Which makes sense, especially when you mentioned the reliance on agricultural imports. That struck me.
Yeah, for a country with such a strong farming history.
Well, it feels like a paradox, doesn't it?
And it really does. It's a critical point. Nepal has great potential for things like cardamom, tea, high-value exports. But it's importing huge amounts of agricultural goods. Over 203 billion rupees in just 7 months.
Why is that happening?
Well, trade agreements play a part. Especially with India, that open border, the duty-free access, it often means imported food is just cheaper.
Cheaper than local produce.
Sometimes, yeah. And that, unfortunately, acts as a brake on domestic farming. Kind of holds it back.
Okay. Shifting gears slightly, but still on development, Prime Minister Oli has been out inaugurating projects, like that road in Phardpur.
Ah, yes, the 6-lane road. That one highlights some ongoing issues. It finished 20 months behind schedule.
20 months. That's quite a delay.
It is, and the cost was around 1.12 billion rupees. So yeah, project management challenges are still there.
But there seems to be some focus on improving that.
Well, you saw the PM also inspecting the Narayanhat-Butwal road section, and he was really stressing the need to finish on time.
Which people probably appreciated given the hassle these delays cause.
Absolutely. That prolonged public inconvenience, it's a big factor. So maybe a renewed focus on efficiency. People are hoping so.
And then there's Pokhara. That seems to be booming in terms of tourism investment.
Oh, definitely. About 4 billion rupees invested in just the last 6 months. It's quite remarkable.
What's driving that?
A couple of things, really. The better highways connecting to Pokhara and, of course, the new international airport there.
Makes sense. Easier access brings more interest.
Precisely. And you're seeing it on the ground. At least 8 new hotels have opened up recently.
Wow. Any standouts?
Well, the Temple Bell Boutique Hotel and Spa is pretty impressive. That's a 1.25 billion rupee investment, and it's really focused on traditional Nepalese themes and design.
Sounds beautiful. Shows real confidence in Pokhara's tourism future.
It certainly does. A strong signal.
Okay, let's move over to health. The ministry's plan for a unique health ID. That sounds ambitious.
It is a potentially transformative step for healthcare management in Nepal.
How so? What's the core idea?
The idea is to have all your health information, everything consolidated under one single digital ID, one platform.
So no more scattered paper records or different hospital systems.
That's the goal. It could mean much better efficiency, better continuity of care for individuals, easier access to their own information.
It sounds great in principle. Is it actually happening?
Well, they've formed a recommendation committee led by Dr. Saroj Sharma. Their job is to figure out the best way to create this ID and, crucially, how to integrate it with existing government IDs.
So it's being seriously looked into.
Yes. Definitely seems like more than just talk.
Well, we also saw some financial news, an IPO, and some bonds being issued.
Right. Sanvi Energy launched an IPO. What's interesting there is who it's targeted at. Locals affected by their hydropower projects, the Jogmai Kola and Cascade projects, and also Nepalese workers overseas.
Oh, that's an interesting approach, kind of involving stakeholders directly.
Exactly, giving them a chance to invest in the country's development.
About 3.79 million shares offered.
And the bonds. That was Rastriya Banija Bank, RBB. They're issuing bonds worth 2.50 billion rupees.
Okay.
It's a 7-year bond offering a 7% interest rate. And they've allocated parts for institutional investors and the general public. So another investment channel opening up.
Got it. One last economic point. The Kerala border with China. Sounds like a bit of a mixed picture.
Yeah, you could say that. It really highlights a sort of mismatch.
I mean,
On the Chinese side, apparently it's thriving. Modern facilities, infrastructure.
and on the Nepalese side.
Lagging behind.
Mm.
Seriously lagging. There's a lack of basic infrastructure. The immigration office is actually closed.
Closed. So how does trade happen?
Traders are literally operating out of tents. There's no proper storage, and customs clearance is done like 13 kilometers away.
Wow. That sounds incredibly inefficient.
It is. It shows this huge potential for trade that Nepal isn't really set up to capture yet. A real need for investment there.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift focus now to social and cultural matters. The teachers' protests in Kathmandu, that seems to be a recurring issue.
It does, unfortunately. There's renewed turmoil, and this has been dragging on for quite some time.
What's the core demand this time?
They're demanding the immediate passage of the school education bill. This bill has been stalled for over 18 months now.
Why the delay? What are the sticking points?
It seems to revolve around teacher management, like who's primarily responsible, the federal government or local governments, and also about implementing agreements that were made previously.
And the government's response.
Appeals for dialogue, promises. But the teachers are insisting they want the bill endorsed. It even got to the point where PM Oli called them for direct talks recently.
It must be creating a really difficult situation, especially for students.
Oh, absolutely. You've got this academic year underway, enrollment happening, exams coming up.
So the government's urging them back to the classrooms.
Yes, they're emphasizing the impact on students, understandably, but there seem to be differing views on the bill's details and maybe some, mistrust between the teachers groups and the government. That's making resolution tricky.
Yeah, a tough one. On a slightly more positive social note, things in Bergen seem to be calming down.
Yes, thankfully. After those tensions around the Hanuman Jayanti procession back in April.
Right, there were some clashes between communities.
There were, but reports suggest things are subsiding now. Local admin, political parties, community leaders, they've all been working to restore harmony.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, and the ban on rallies and demonstrations is expected to be lifted soon, so signs of normalcy returning.
Also on the positive side, some public health campaigns are rolling out.
Yes, vital ones. The Ministry of Health is administering vitamin A and deworming tablets.
That reaches a lot of children, right?
About 2.2 million kids. It's a huge, important preventative health measure.
And in Gandaki province.
They've launched screening campaigns for non-communicable diseases, things like blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, some cancers, taking it right to the community level.
Ooh, active healthcare. That's good.
Definitely a positive step against those growing lifestyle diseases.
Now, in the digital world, Nepal seems to be getting tough with big tech, pushing Meta to register.
Yeah, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Nepal has these tougher social media rules, and they want Meta registered under them. There's a deadline, April 20th.
They made it?
Well, Meta sent representatives to Kathmandu for talks. So it shows the government's serious and Meta is engaging. It reflects that global trend of governments wanting more oversight.
But the digital world has its downsides too. That e-theft sounds serious.
Very serious. Over 10 million rupees allegedly stolen from around 4,000 accounts.
How did that happen?
Phishing links, apparently. Someone was arrested. But it really highlights the risks, doesn't it? Cyber attacks are getting more sophisticated.
And the vulnerabilities in digital payment systems.
Exactly. Constant need for better security and just making people more aware of online safety.
Okay, rounding out the social cultural section, some environmental news, bad news and good news.
Kind of, yeah. The bad news is Kathmandu Valley's air quality worsened again, ranked second most polluted globally at one point recently.
Oh dear. That's a persistent problem.
It really is. A major public health concern. But then, the good news, a new bird species was discovered in Elam.
Oh, fantastic. What is it?
the violet cuckoo, or Baijani coily in Nepalese. It brings Nepal's total recorded bird species up to 899.
Wow, 899. That's incredible biodiversity. A nice reminder of Nepal's natural heritage.
Absolutely. Though, sadly, we also have to mention the pre-monsoon season. 41 people were killed in disaster incidents like rainfall, thunderstorms, lightning. A stark reminder of natural hazard risks, too.
Right, a sobering note. Okay, let's move into politics and governance. And, well, you can't ignore the Pokhara International Airport corruption scandal.
No, you really can't. It's a major, major story, deeply concerning.
What did the parliamentary subpanel find?
Irregularities and corruption amounting to roughly 14 billion rupees.
14 billion, just staggering. What kind of irregularities?
A whole range, highly questionable payments, like $5.5 million supposedly for transporting soil, but with no evidence soil was actually brought in from outside.
Seriously.
Yeah. Also, issues with tax exemptions that seem to contradict the agreements made. And maybe most worryingly, the runway was apparently built at a lower elevation than planned.
That sounds fundamental.
It does. The subpanel recommended immediate suspension and investigation of the CAN chief, Pradeep Adhikari, and other officials.
So strong recommendations, at least from that panel.
Yes, it really emphasizes how seriously they're viewing it. But, this case also shines a light on the bigger picture.
Which is?
The broader issue of systemic corruption in Nepal's political economy. It seems deeply embedded sometimes.
Is anything being done about that wider problem?
Well, there's a recent amendment to the anti-corruption law. It now includes penalties for public officials for inaction, which is interesting.
So not just for doing something wrong, but for failing to act when they should.
Exactly. It's a step. But how effective measures like that are against high-level systemic corruption? That's the big question, isn't it?
Always. Beyond that huge scandal, what else is happening in governance?
Well, the ruling coalition is pushing hard to get the federal civil service bill approved quickly in committee. Seems like a priority.
Trying to reform the bureaucracy, perhaps.
That seems to be the aim. Also, the Nepali Congress decided not to quit the Oli government, despite some noises about dissatisfaction within the party.
So, maintaining coalition stability. For now, at least.
Looks like it. And then Sumana Shasta resigned as Joint General Secretary of the Rastriya Swatantra Party. That might suggest some internal issues or shifts within that newer party.
Always interesting to watch the dynamics within parties, especially newer ones.
Definitely. And then you have ongoing issues like the struggles of landless citizens. The government keeps giving assurances through the Land Problem Resolution Commission, but it's a persistent challenge.
A deep-rooted social inequality issue.
It is. And you also had Maoist Center Chair Dahal talking about needing constitutional amendments for political stability. So fundamental debates about the political structure are still happening.
Right. And a couple of other points. Plans to upgrade the Tadapani border with China?
Yes, that's important for trade, but also tourism and pilgrimage. So an effort there. And it looks likely Gunakar Bhatta will be the next NRB governor following some agreement within the ruling coalition.
Okay. So lots happening on the political and governance front, as always.
Never a dull moment.
So as we sort of wrap up this deep dive, looking back at everything, you really see developments across the board, don't you?
Absolutely. Economic strategies, big infrastructure pushes, social challenges like education, health initiatives.
And the governance issues, the fight against corruption, it's all connected.
It really is. You can't separate them. Economic policies impact society. Governance decisions shape development. Social stability affects the economy. Understanding those links is key.
Definitely gives you a richer picture of what's happening in Nepal right now.
Sure.
Now, just quickly, for our Nepalese listeners tuning in from the UK, we want to give a shout out to belayat.uk.
Yeah.
It's a classified site specifically for the Nepalese community in the UK. Great resource for finding jobs, housing, checking out local events, finding Nepalese-owned businesses there.
Really useful for connecting with the community, belayat.uk.
And for everyone listening, if you want more in-depth info, continuous updates on everything we've talked about, and more, please do visit our main site, nepalidiaspora.net.
Yeah, lots more detail there, which kind of brings us to a final thought, maybe something for listeners to ponder.
Go ahead.
Given everything we've discussed, the economy, education, health, corruption, governance, what do you think are the most critical areas needing attention in Nepal right now? And perhaps what role could the global Nepalese diaspora play in driving positive change in those areas?
That's a great question to leave people with. Food for thought. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you a valuable overview of key events unfolding in Nepal.